What's up, everybody? My name is Alex Wilson. I have my co-host beside me, Anthony Rivaldo from Fireside Giants and Empire Sports Media Production. And you're listening to the Fireside Giants podcast. If you are a diehard Giants fan, you've come to the right place, my friends. Daily episodes, draft content, and so much more. Make sure to drop a like and a subscription below on YouTube. And don't forget to leave a comment. We'd love to engage with everybody. Now that Anthony is back from his booze cruise, having a good old time, we're going to talk about some NFL draft, NFL combine stuff. There's a lot to go through. Yesterday, I dropped the video about Christian Watson out of North Dakota State University, taking a look at him and a lot of hype going around regarding this specific player and how his speed and frame is really awesome. And I know a lot of guys really like this player, but we have a lot to talk about. James Bradberry kind of being on the trade line right now. He's kind of on the fence. You know, the Giants may look to trade him. What could they get back for him? I'm really curious to see what Anthony has to think about this, and you guys as well. So make sure to drop your thoughts and your reasoning behind them in the YouTube comments. Saquon Barkley, reports coming out the Giants don't necessarily want to trade him. Why is that? What is he going to offer this team moving forward? What's the point of keeping him any longer? And some combine updates, some players that we like. Charles Cross, Ikem Ekwonu, Kayvon Thibodeau kind of coming with their numbers. And a lot of good information going on about those three guys and where they could possibly go in the first 5 picks of the Giants. Obviously want those guys to fall so they have their fair share of opportunities. But we'll see. There's a lot of teams that are really getting high on Thibodeau and Ekwonu especially. So, he even thinks he could go number 1 overall, Anthony. Before we dive into all this good stuff, my friend, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Had a really awesome time in the Bahamas, celebrating spring break, just kind of resetting. But I was plugged off the internet for a while. So came back and saw all these rumors about the Giants. Maybe we're going to see James Bradberry go away this offseason. Saquon Barkley could potentially be traded. Seems like they're not getting the return on value for Saquon that they want, so it doesn't seem too likely that they trade him. But they've already made a couple moves to clear up some cap space. Obviously, they cut Kyle Rudolph. They also cut Devontae Booker. The Giants are working. Joe Schoen is working on the cap. He said he wanted to clear around $40 million in cap space for this offseason, and he's already gotten to work on that. Discussing a contract pay decrease with Sterling Shepard as well. He could be cut or he could take a significant pay cut. So we'll see what happens there, but there's a lot going on. Of course, the NFL Combine is an exciting time. Kayvon Thibodeau just put up 27 bench reps today, looking like an absolute tank. So really exciting stuff going on in the NFL world. We're inching closer and closer to free agency. I think we're about 2 weeks away, so that's going to be really exciting. Now I can't wait to cover all of the free agency news right here on Fireside Giants.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be exciting. The Giants, they're going to be shopping in the clearance section for the most part, but you never know. Sometimes you can find some nice shit in the clearance section, my friends. There's some gems in there if you look hard enough. Some stuff that people are trying to throw away, but there's value. There is value in the clearance section. You can always find it. Joe Schoen, hopefully Brian Dable are good enough to find those gems and that value where the Giants can really maximize on that talent. Now, I want to dive into James Bradberry right off the bat. This is a player who was tremendous for the Giants in 2020. He gave up 3 touchdowns, I think about 425 yards allowed. Awesome season. He was looking like one of the best corners in football. Now, last year, Giants kind of went to this cover 1 system in the beginning of the year. They kind of dropped off out of that because it wasn't working well. The pass rush wasn't getting there. They needed to play bend, don't break. They needed to stay on the field as long as possible, really, because the offense was just in, out, in, out. They were just 3 and outs over and over and over. It was unsustainable for the most part. Now, James Bradberry ends up allowing, 700 and something yards and 8 touchdowns. That is pretty much he doubled his production allowed in 1 year, which is problematic. Now you look at Wink Martindale's system coming over, playing a lot of man coverage, playing a very aggressive scheme, cover 1, not going to be much safety help over the top. If you have James Bradberry against a faster receiver, let's say you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, you have Mecole Hardman and you have Tyreek Hill. You have Adoree Jackson against Tyreek Hill, and you have Mecole Hardman and James Bradberry lined up against one another. Let's use that as an example. You say Mecole Hardman, just run a 9 route, man. Just freaking burn him. He's gonna burn James Bradberry. Bradberry's not a fast corner like that. He's not gonna stick on those guys. He's going to get burned in the open field without safety help. That is where I'm most concerned regarding his play. I would rather, for the Giants, considering they're going through a rebuild right now, commit to a younger player. If you're going to go draft somebody, maybe a Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati, really good physical man coverage corner. Maybe you commit to Aaron Robinson, move him to the outside, see what he can do. I wouldn't mind that either. Adoree Jackson is staying, but James Bradberry, I think he's on his way out. It seems like he's the most likely to be traded, Anthony. But the question is, what do you think we can get in return for him? You're basically getting a $21 million corners, which we would have had to pay him this year if we keep him. You're basically getting him at that price for maybe $9 million because the Giants still have to pay $12.2 or $9.8 million in dead money, and then they have if they kept him They'd obviously pay the full 21.8. If they were to release him, just straight up cut him, they would pay 9.8 or something like that in dead money, and then they'd save about 12.1 million. So if you trade him, it's kind of the same thing, but you get draft capital in return as well. So, Anthony, what do you think the Giants could get from James Bradberry in terms of draft capital? Maybe a third round pick. I think that would be ideal.
Yeah, reading up on it, it seems like Dan Duggan of The Athletic, he's been talking to people in Indianapolis right now during the combine. He's saying that around the third round pick is what the Giants could probably get for James Bradberry. But you also read the reports. James Bradberry is expected to generate significant interest around the league. Like his trade market should be pretty wide. So, teams could get into a bidding war, and this could go from being, a compensatory third round pick all the way to like a high third round pick. The Giants could potentially get a very valuable draft pick out of James Bradberry, despite his contract. Now, Dan Duggan also mentions that Saquon Barkley's expected trade market lands at around the fourth round pick, which you would probably expect to be a little bit higher. But then again, he is a running back coming off of two significant injuries. Kind of makes sense, a fourth round pick. But I think that the more likely of the two to be traded is probably James Bradberry, just due to the fact that a third round pick is a very valuable draft selection, especially when you have a general manager that knows how to hit on middle round picks like Joe Shane, right? He's hit on those middle round picks over in Buffalo. A third round pick, he might look at that and say, you know what? As great as James Bradberry is, I could probably find a cornerback for a lot cheaper with that third round pick that's almost just as good. So he might have that mindset towards it where he thinks that third round pick is very, very valuable. Now, of course, it's like, do you want to give up a proven commodity in James Bradberry, a solid cornerback, for a draft pick where you might get a good cornerback? That's kind of the question at the end of the day. But of course, the Giants are just so strapped for cash. They have no cap space. Making a move like this might be their only option. And honestly, if you're forced to trade away one of your best defenders, you're forced to trade away this veteran James Bradberry, you can't complain too much if you're trading him away and getting a third round pick.
Right. An extra third round pick goes a long way. And the reason I say that is because let's say the Giants already have two third round picks to begin with, right? They already have two. You add a third to that. Now you're talking about maybe we package the two of them together and move up back into the second round and get a player we know that we have graded highly. Maybe a guy that they have a first round grade on drops to the mid second round and they trade up and snag him. That is something that is very realistic that teams do all the time. Something the Giants would have a lot of leverage in. So you could get two players in the third round. I think there's a couple of really, really good players, maybe like a Zion Johnson. I think a little bit earlier, maybe a Devin Kennard, an offensive guard. Maybe the guy I talked about yesterday, Christian Watson. His stock is skyrocketing right now. Ton of pass rushers in this draft. Trading up into the mid-second round seems like a logical thing to do if you have all those third round picks to spend.
Yeah, and I'll even say this. Think about this potential hypothetical scenario, right? You're throwing out there, you get some third round picks and you trade back up into the second round. Well, you could also look at it this way. What if the Giants are sitting with the fifth pick and they want to move up to the third pick to get Evan Neal, right? One of those extra third round picks, you could probably take those two third round picks, throw it up towards whatever team, and then move up a couple spots and make sure that you get that offensive tackle that you want. And then with the seventh pick, you trade down and then you just get those picks right back. Giants have a lot of flexibility in this draft, and
It's
just
a
adding
great
more
point.
middle round picks gives them even more flexibility. So you could basically trade away a guy like James Bradberry, move up, get your premier offensive tackle, the one that you want, and then trade down and recoup all the stuff that you just lost to move up. So gives the Giants a lot of flexibility if they make this trade, especially when you consider the fact that it would clear a bunch of cap space, making it much easier for the Giants to afford a higher first round or second round draft pick, because those cost money, right? Every rookie that you're going to draft here, especially in the first and second round, is going to come with a cap hit. And the higher up you make those selections, the higher the salary cap hit. So trading down makes sense for the Giants monetarily so that they can fit everybody under the cap space. But if you're trading away a guy like James Bradberry to move up in the draft, you're kind of using the money that you gave up, or the money that you freed up by trading James Bradberry, and you're investing it into young talent that you can build around for the long term.
And honestly, that might have been one of the best points I've heard in a while, right? If you take those third round picks and you pair them and you move up to get an Evan Neal and you trade back with that seventh overall pick, you open up a world of opportunity, right? Because by the seventh overall pick, let's say you go and get Evan Neal. Let's say you get Evan Neal, right? This is one of the deepest draft class for pass rushers, right? There's so many pass rushers this year, so many to choose from. If you have the seventh overall pick, maybe you stay there. Maybe you go after a Jermaine Johnson of FSU that looked really good. Maybe you trade back a couple spots. You get those third round picks back, and you go after a Tyler Linderbaum and really shore up the offensive line. Or you go after a corner. Maybe Derek Stingley out of LSU's dropping, and you're like, oh, he's dropping. Maybe we go after him and get him. He's coming off that List Frank injury, but hell, he's one of the top corners in this draft, and he's a lockdown guy when he's healthy. So maybe they go that route. There's so many things that can happen in this draft. A lot of guys are going to go up and down. You never know. If there's a couple of guys on the board and the Giants say, hey, I think one of them will be there at maybe 10 to the 15 range, you can trade back and easily get your 3rd-round pick back. So I think that's a really, really great point to make. And another reason that James Bradberry likely won't be here, because the more ammo they have, the more opportunity they have, and the more leverage they have. And Joe Shane said it recently, we want as many at-bats as possible, which is pretty clearly indicating we're going to trade some guys and get some more draft capital back in the first place. But in terms of combine updates, I do want to hit on Kayvon Thibodeau as one of the topics today. He's a guy that, had his stock he's been going up and down. He's like the Dow Jones, man. You can't tell where he's going to land at this point. And I kind of feel like he's going to end up going top 5, 27 reps. I know a lot of other guys, some running backs even did that, but when you have arms as long as him, 27 reps is freaking impressive. The shorter arms you have, the more stock you are, the easier it is to pump out those reps, because you don't have to fully, like, your full extension isn't that hard to get to. When you have arms as long as he does, the full extension is wildly hard to get to. So 27 reps for an outside linebacker, and with his speed and agility, is tremendous. He showcased the strength. I mean, he looked really confident in his interview with the media. Some might even say he was overconfident, and I don't even care about the confidence, really. I just want him to be a good teammate, and I want him to be good on the field. We know he's confident, but I think that, can he handle the New York media? The Giants were hard on him, and he said that they were hard on me. They really tested me. How am I going to be able to perform in the New York media? What happens if I don't have a sack for 5 games? How am I going to answer those calls? How am I going to respond to the criticism? And I think that's a really great question to ask. How can you respond to that? Because for the most part, we've seen players have really bad situations with the media. I mean, OBJ had his fair share of issues. The media really attacked him. I mean, even Kadarius Toney, he fired back a time or two on Instagram last season. We've seen it all, right? We've seen guys, Kenny Golladay, we saw him yelling at Jason Garrett on live television. Think guys get in trouble. And I think that for the most part, them testing Kayvon Thibodeau in that way is a really good sign that they definitely are interested in him, and they want to see how he would respond to that. He said, I've been in the spotlight my entire life. I grew up in LA. I've been in the spotlight all these years. I'm not, distant from it. So this is something I'm used to. I think that's a really good way to put it. But Anthony, when you're looking at Kayvon Thibodeau, has he done himself any favors? Do you think he's going top 5? Do you think the Giants will have a realistic shot at him at this point? Or do you think he's still kind of in that 5 to 7 range?
I think they have a chance at him, and honestly, I like what he said in his interviews, and I'll even bring up my favorite portion of it, and I'll bring up a quote as well. Kayvon Thibodeau really demonstrated a great understanding of NFL pass rushing, like what makes a good NFL pass rusher. And here's the quote that showed me that. Chess is life and chess is football. You talk about doing your first move, and your first move is going to set up your second move, then your third move ahead. When you talk about pass rush, I'm going to hit you with speed first. I always hit you with speed, speed, speed. That's going to set up my power moves, and then my power moves are going to set up my counter. That's a great quote to me. Playing football like chess from a pass rushing standpoint is uber important, because you are always trying to set up the offensive tackle to think you're doing one thing, and that's when you trick them into doing the other. And that's when you look at the greats, like the best pass rushers in the NFL, the Chase Youngs of the world, the Nick Bosa's of the world, Joey Bosa as well, Aaron Donald. You'll see they have a wide array of pass rush moves, and they're always using specific pass rush moves to set up the offensive tackle into making a mistake, take advantage of that mistake with a different pass rush move to get to the quarterback. And Kayvon Thibodeau already has a very good understanding of that, and the way he was able to articulate it in that interview, I think is really important and very special, and does show that he's a very intelligent guy that knows exactly what he needs to do to succeed at the next level. So I definitely think he did himself some favors. Of course, the 27 bench reps with those long arms, that's super impressive. He looks like he's got the makings of a stud, right? He answered the interview questions properly. He really articulated himself well, made a phenomenal analogy there. And I think that all of that, it shines through in the interview process, or in the media interview process, but it's definitely going to shine through in the team interview process as well. So he's definitely doing himself some good favors over here at the Combine, and I'm excited to see if his draft stock does rise and he shoots into the top 3, or if he stays about where he is and the Giants have a real crack at him at number 5 or number 7. And if they do, I think that they would be kind of silly to turn him down. I think that he really is one of those great top 5 to 10 prospects.
Yeah, I definitely think that he did himself some favors at the Combine. A couple other guys that really stood out. Ikem Ekwonu did really well in the media interviews. He looked good. Evan Neal, the guy is a specimen. If you look at his body, man, he is all muscle. He's like 6'7", like 340 pounds. Dudes like that are not, most of them look like meatballs. He is ripped. His body is going to develop, and it's going to continue to develop with an NFL system around him. I know Alabama's pretty much that way anyway, but you put an NFL training staff, give him the food, give him everything he needs, that guy's going to be a freaking beast. I think Jacksonville goes with him and locks down that tackle spot for the future because they need to protect Trevor Lawrence ultimately. Second overall, it's tough. I don't exactly know where Detroit goes here. Maybe they fall in love with Malik Willis. He looked awesome at the combine. His Wonderlic score was off the charts. They're like, he's way smarter than we thought. He's doing a really great job articulating exactly what that offense with Liberty did. And I think that ultimately he's done himself a lot of favors too. He could be a top 10 pick now. And really, I don't really care much for the deep passes in shorts. I don't really care about that. We know he has a freaking cannon for an arm. How can he do when there's pressure on his face? Can he make stuff happen after the play? We know he can do that. Can he get through his progressions? Can he understand an NFL defense? Can he break that down? Can he learn a new system? Can he make everybody else around him better? Can he compensate for bad offensive line play? These are all things that we have to see. But I think in the right system with a year to wait, I think that he could be a great player. And, like I said, right system, a year to develop, he could be an elite player. But that really what's going to take from Malik Willis.
Yeah, and I'll say with Malik Willis, I always think with the NFL Combine, in terms of quarterbacks, the more important thing is their game tape. It's not what their throws that they're making in underwear at the Combine, not as important as what they put on the tape, right? And he's put some phenomenal throws on the tape. That's absolutely true. Like, he has thrown some real bombs, and that's well demonstrated in his career in college. But the more important part of the NFL Combine, in my eyes, for a quarterback is all of the interview stuff, right? How do they impress the teams that are interviewing them? Do they stand out as a leader, as a guy that can really win a team over through his words? Because I think that stuff is super, super important. I think that's almost one of the reasons that Daniel Jones won over the Giants a few years ago, because he came across as the next Eli Manning. He was a phenomenal leader, and he was exactly what they wanted to put as the face of the New York Giants. But I will say this. I've always had the opinion that the throws in underwear at the combine are not that important. But someone who made me change that opinion at least somewhat, and I stand by that opinion, but I do put a little bit of stock into what happens at the combine now. The reason why is because back when Josh Allen went to the combine, he was out there ripping 75-yard bombs. And I said, okay, that's great, but he's super inaccurate. Let's see him do it at the next level. The Bills said, okay, we see something special with him. Let's go ahead, draft him, develop that deep ball, develop him into an accurate quarterback, and make him the next superstar. And that's exactly what Joe Shane, Brian Dable, and the Buffalo Bills did. So, you know what? I don't think that the Giants are drafting a quarterback this year, but there is a really good chance that the mindset you just had, Alex, give him a year to develop into a system, rein him in, and turn him into a good quarterback. There's a really good chance that Joe Shane and Brian Dable could be thinking the exact same thing. They could be saying, hey, I remember when Josh Allen came to the combine and threw some deep bombs with perfect accuracy and throwing it further than anyone else on the field. Malik Willis is reminding us of that. And they might get deja vu and they might say, you know what, screw it. Let's go ahead with Malik Willis as our quarterback. Now, I'm not saying they will, but I'm saying it's a possibility. And it is just a situation that reminded me of one that we've seen with the Buffalo Bills, Joe Shane and Brian Dable. So keep an eye on it, right? You just got to keep an eye on it. It's early. We've got a long time until April. There's going to be plenty of pre-draft evaluations that Brian Dable, Joe Shane are going to collaborate on and get done. And honestly, Malik Willis, he looked really impressive. But the number one thing, like I said, the number one takeaway that you have to have at the combine for quarterbacks is who they are as people, right? Because that's what Joe Shane said. Sometimes you don't miss on the player, you miss on the person. Malik Willis seems to be really hitting all the strides in the interviews and proving to be a good person. And that could be something that any given NFL team could fall in love with.
Absolutely. I mean, someone caught him on video, like not even in the combine or anywhere. He was just outside giving like a homeless guy a shirt. Like it's stuff like that that you don't even know you're being filmed. He's a good guy. He's a good person. And I would not be surprised. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm not saying it's my preference, but if the Giants drafted Malik Willis at 7, if he was there at 7 and they drafted him, I would not be mad. I think that Daniel Jones is unproven. I think he has what it takes. I think he has the legs, he has the arm, but he's going into his third system in 3 years, his third offensive system. He doesn't know the scheme. He doesn't know the verbiage. His offensive line is still going to be a liability, guys. They're not solving this offensive line in one offseason with no money. It's not going to happen. They're going to be average at best, and even average might not help him get to where we need to see him be. The fifth year option is probably going to be declined. Are you then franchise tagging him at $30 million? That's going to take a third of our money away, maybe more. Are you going to extend him with 1 year of, if Malik Willis balls out, then Daniel Jones walks and maybe goes to another team and has a good career. You just can't put all your chips in one basket all the time. Now, if they don't go with Malik Willis, I'm going to be a Daniel Jones fan. Like, I'm going to root for him. I'm a Giants fan after all. I want him to succeed. That's not the problem here. The thing is, you have to have a assurance at all times for a quarterback, especially one that's unproven and is heading toward the end of their rookie contract. What they do with the 5th-year option will be interesting, especially, after the draft and whatnot. So, I'm curious to see what happens. But anyway, I think that really wraps up this episode. We've talked about a lot of different players here. We've covered James Bradberry, Saquon Barkley. We're going to do some more film breakdowns in the coming days, guys. We'll be obviously looking at the NFL draft and any other news that comes out. I know Charles Cross is a guy that I really want to talk about because he realistically might be the option for us at 7 if we don't hit an offensive tackle at 5. He's been working with Duke Manyweather, who Rashawn Slater worked with last year and absolutely kicked ass. And now he's one of the best tackles already in the NFL. So it's like you're looking at that. You're looking at who they're working with. Charles Cross, he had his shuffle drill before. It was phenomenal. His feet were fast. He looked great. He's athletic as hell. Now he does have a leaner frame, but can he move to the right tackle? That's the question. Can he move to the right tackle spot? That's something I do want to talk about and discuss in future episodes, Anthony. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, make sure to drop a like and subscription below on YouTube, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.